Hi, welcome back to Carl and Rick Talk Risk. Rick, how are you?
Awesome. How the heck are you?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. Fresh back from a conference, which I always enjoy because I see a lot of familiar faces. It was in London. Got to host a roundtable on demographics. Had some interesting attendees there who were keen on the topic. It's one of those topics you don't get people that are about the topic. You're either super into it or you've never heard of it. You couldn't care less.
Well, I,
Um,
I still think that Kevin Foote's book, Boom, Bust, and Echo, is a must read. I have to admit,
uh,
I'm not as passionate about demographics as you are.
uh,
But then again, I don't think that there's anyone on the planet who's as passionate about the risk dynamics of demographics as you are. So,
yeah, and that really was a nice book because he, unlike a lot of people, he actually turns it into insights. Okay, what is this going to mean for consumer
yeah.
products? What is this going to mean for vacations? And that's where I'm trying to go to next is what does changing demographics mean for financial markets and how they operate? And so had a good session. Everybody had lived somewhere else, so they were all like, "Oh, well, in Japan, this is how it was." And um, we had one person from the US who's actually visiting Nova Scotia later this year, Rick. So we were talking about Cape Breton,
Everybody
and
wants to visit Nova Scotia.
it's
Like, I
a
mean,
beautiful place.
that's on everyone's bucket list for crying out loud, or should
Yeah,
be.
yeah, beautiful place. Great wineries. Great. There's a distillery up in Cape Breton. I still want to get to badly.
Glen
Um,
Breton.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Great place, and I want to time it so I can watch some storms as well. The one time I was supposed to go to Cape Breton, a storm took out all the electricities and we didn't go. So yeah, I've never been.
Wow.
Um, yeah. Anyway, well, yeah, good conference. Can't wait till the next one. Attended a good session on psychology of LLMs. So I'll see if maybe we do a session, maybe we do an episode about some of the things I learned there another time. But Rick, I had interesting conversation with somebody this week. I'll leave out all the identifying details, but an interviewee uh, got a difficult technical question, which they couldn't answer, and they didn't say, "I don't know the answer to that," in response. I think we've all been in the situation, especially early in our careers, right? You get one interviewer who's playing the bad cop, and starts asking all the dreaded technical questions, the gotcha questions, and you're just, oh, you can feel it. You can feel it's coming. And even if you know the answer, sometimes just the pressure just gets to you and you don't know what to say. And of course, you never want to say, I don't know. Anyway, so let me finish my story and then we'll talk about this. So um, he didn't really have an answer. He didn't say, I don't know. Um, didn't get the job, but complained about the technical question, said it was unfair, which I think is a bold move. I admire him for that. And managed to actually get a second interview at another chance at putting things right. So it differ. It's not the interview approach I would take in that situation. I have a lot of thoughts on this, but I kind of want to hear what you think about what this guy did and how you approach gotcha questions.
Well, uh, first off, I got your questions. Back when I was in capital markets, of course, we need to see how a person performs under stress. And the gotcha questions for us kind of took a little bit of a different form. It was, I know that you should know, but you don't know. In other words, what's your middle name? I something that everyone in the room knows that you know, but you don't, because that produces the most amount of stress.
Mm.
Uh, just backing up a little bit, people, a lot of my students, I get this all the time. My students are so concerned um, about finding the perfect answer for an interview question. And I've got a couple of lines for them. First off, if you have to act for a job, if you're that good at acting for a job, go to Hollywood. Okay.
Mm.
Uh, with the exception of, a few capital markets jobs and a few hedge fund jobs, You're going to do much better in Hollywood if you're that good at memorizing and spitting out lines in a convincing manner. And if you do get the job because of your acting skills, then you're stuck in a job in which you have to act for the rest of your career, which kind of sucks. Or I
Mhm.
think it would kind of suck. The second thing about gotcha questions is actually prepare for them by the sense of saying, literally, this is one, and I'm going back to what I said, you should practice say, hey, I don't know, but I'll get back to you on it.
Yeah.
And my strategy is you take the gotcha questions or the questions that you didn't answer the way that you would have liked, um, and you use them as opportunities in your follow-up response.
Hmm.
I say, thank you for the interview. By the way, I meant to ask you, how many days vacation are there a year? That's not a really good thank you,
Yeah.
Eric, but thank you for the interview. I realized I really stumbled on XYZ, and here's how I should have handled it, wish I'd handled it.
Yeah.
But um, uh, so
In a,
I actually see them as opportunities. I did a gotcha question once, and admittedly, it wasn't quite a gotcha question, but I was asked, what is the delta of a digital? And of course, I was like, I'm sorry, but I was straight out. First off, I kind of laughed up and I said, I'm sorry, but I have no clue what a digital is. Okay. And the thing was they explained to me what a digital option was. I said,
Mhm.
oh. And then I just talked out loud about what the digital was. And the fact that I was so stupid that I didn't know what a digital option was, and I was applied for an exotic options position, but the fact that I could think it out live, real time, I think impressed them way more than if I answered the question
Yeah.
correctly the first time. One other thing about, and this part is mainly for my students or for the younger people out there. Um, if the organization is hiring you based solely on the technical questions, it's probably a job that you don't want, or they are. It's one of several things. First off, you're being interviewed by a junior employee who probably just learned the technical term 10 minutes ago in a training seminar themselves.
Hmm.
And it's asked by a low level employee who only knows technical stuff. So if you're trying to progress in the organization, and if the organization sees that this is a position with a future, they're going to ask you questions more about that are much more open ended. Yes, you have to know what a stock and a bond is, but and you have to know the fundamentals. But the technical gotcha questions, I I think that for a serious position, for all but the lowest level of starter positions with no future, no one really cares about them ultimately. The more senior managers will care about the personality type questions, your character questions, your integrity questions. And again, not
Yeah.
that we ever ask, hey, what's your integrity like?
Yeah.
Uh, but those are the ones that are more interesting
Yeah.
and more important in my mind.
Yeah. Our approach to interviewing is so similar that, yeah, there's not a lot of daylight uh, places where I would step in. I do. I want to. I think it's interesting. When you ask ChatGPT a question, and there's a few seconds where it's saying analyzing the question, thinking through responses, the the request is looking for this, and this. You should be AI when you're asked these kind of gotcha questions. What is the interviewer really looking for? I mean, they're looking for your understanding about something. Something I've recommended to a friend in the past is ask clarifying questions. Like if you're feeling under pressure because it's tough thinking on the spot and coming up with something very quickly, ask a clarifying question. Just because they've asked you a question and you have this big spotlight on you doesn't mean you have to blurt the first thing out of your mouth. Take your time, calm down, ask them a clarifying question. Is this what you're looking for? Like you asked about the digital. I don't know what a digital is. Can you explain more? It's perfectly okay. And I think it gets to what you said, which I think is best advice is they don't. Most interviewers don't care about right answers. Students are obsessed with getting everything correct. I agree, but your thinking process is so much more important. People want to get along with you in a team. They want to see evidence that there's some intelligence behind the veneer. Like how do you approach a problem? Um, uh, and the example I always give to people, and I've given it so many times, I've probably mentioned it here, is that I think it was a Goldman Sachs interview question: how many manhole covers are there in New York City? Of course, there's no answer. That's the whole point of it. But how would you go about something knowing that there's no answer? There's got to be some kind of approach. How many blocks are there in New York? I mean, you can guess, right? How many manhole covers per block? There's no wrong way of doing it. Just talking through how you would approach it if you had to is much more impressive than a correct answer.
Of course, the other strategy that you can use, which is the favorite of politicians and people that do media interviews a lot, is pivot to the question that you wish that they asked.
Yeah.
But there is a very disturbing trend arising, and that, of course, is the robot interviews, and of course, even more troubling in my mind, in many ways, is the robot on Zoom interviews, or I shouldn't say Zoom, but robot virtual distance robot interviews, where they're doing things such as the eye scans and whatnot to detect believability, et cetera, et cetera. And the robot interviews are a thing, and I have real problems with them on several fronts. So arguably, and boy, I'm going to get in a little bit of trouble from some of my clients here on this, but okay. But first off, for a lot of the interviews, when the students come back to see me after they've had an interview, and we kind of do a debrief on what was good, bad, and ugly about it. The robo interviews suck for everybody, but it also, I think, says a lot about the organization. I just think it screams volumes about the organization. So you can basically throw out, we treat you as a human. Every line in their policy statements that they have, you basically say, well, that's BS. But here's my bigger beef, is by the initial screens done by HR, by people who are acting as if they are bots. So, for example, scripted interviews for legal purposes. I just think, okay, it's great for legal, but that has got to be one of the most soul destroying. It's soul destroying for the interviewers.
Everybody.
I've been on the interviewing or interviewer side of the table of those. And you desperately want to ask a follow-up question. Wow, that was really interesting. Tell me more. Can we go off in this area? But you can't for legal purposes, right? But here's the thing. If you're doing that, just have the freaking robot do it. And let's be honest about it. If your interview process is so dehumanizing, who cares if you have a person doing it or a robot doing it?
Yeah, exactly.
Boy, that was a rant, wasn't it? But anyhow.
No,
I feel so much better having gotten that off my chest.
It's a passionate topic for both of us. I like helping people with interviews as well. So, and I think people overcomplicate interviews way too much. So, anyway, hopefully somebody got some value out of this. Until next time, this has been Carl and Rick Talk Risk. Cheers.